Hello and welcome to Super OK, where we try to do a decent enough job to entertain people with our opinions about video games. I am your host, who is not currently sneezing. My name is Brody. I say I'm not currently sneezing because I'm joined by one other wonderful person who just had a sneeze attack the second that we hit the record button, but looks like he's made a dramatic recovery. Mel, how are you doing? And more importantly, how are you feeling?
I am doing great today. I apologize for sneezing earlier. I think I sneezed like 3 times before we started recording, which is crazy. But we're doing great today. After all of those sneezes are out of the way, I am ready to record this episode.
Wonderful. And so the listeners won't hear your sneezes, of course, since they're cut off. So, Xando, if you're doing this one, you feel free to plug some fun sound effects in there, and we can imagine what it's like when Mel sneezes. But hey, before we get into that, well, no, that we would have already gotten into that. Never mind. I'm killing it right now. Hey, so every week we go ahead and start with our highlight of the week, just something that made our week a little bit better, a little bit brighter. Mel, what recently have you gotten into that really made your week?
Oh man, this week has been crazy because of work. I've just been working like pretty hardcore because we're doing a product release this week. So last week was all about me just prepping everybody to make sure that they know what software is going to be put out relatively soon, right? So, yeah, right. After my hard work day, I have been really getting into Dave the Diver. I talked about this on our last episode, and I have made it like pretty far into Dave the Diver now. I think I'm like 16 hours into the game, maybe, and it is getting so good. Like, I'm going to thank Barefoot Mama again in the Discord for recommending this game to me. She said that like I would absolutely love it, and I freaking do. It is. I've gotten to a part where like I played and completed some of the quests, and the cutscenes in these quests are just like, what the hell? Like, this is crazy. It's just so funny and so quirky. And every single time I play this game, there's always something different. There's always a new mechanic or like a different type of theme around playing Dave the Diver. Like, not only does he go in and dive into the water, but he also owns like a sushi restaurant, but he's also like exploring underwater caves and solving puzzles and helping people and trying to figure out what's the best way to help people. And it's just been so much fun. There's so much variety in this game with like a very like core concept, like mechanical concept of like catching fish and serving, sushi at your restaurant. But like, I cannot gush about this game more. It is so good. Like, Brody, you need to play this game because it has a lot of elements that I think that you would like as a gamer. It has like the fishing. It has like the cozy casualness of this game where you don't really have to like sit and invest a lot of time. And it also has like that one more day factor where you're just like, I want to play one more day. And the next thing you know, you're playing like 4 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I've heard nothing but really super good things about this game. I heard, I saw some articles online saying that this is going to be a lot of probably people's like sleeper hit for, like smaller game of the year, kind of like Vampire Survivors was last year, of just like a super great game. And shout out to Barefoot Mama. Thank you for that throwing that recommendation. It's funny because in the 2 Discords that I'm in with her, this was being recommended in both of them, which I think is totally great. But yeah, I've heard nothing but awesome things about this game. I got a bit on my plate at the moment, so now is not the time for old Brody to start that game, but it sounds awesome.
Yeah, I totally feel you on having too much on your plate, because not only am I playing Dave the Diver and Zelda and Diablo, like I also just started Baldur's Gate, and like Baldur's Gate has been chef's kiss. Like it's like filling this RPG void that I think that like I've been missing for a very long time, because it kind of like has for a lot of people, like I don't believe a lot of people have played Baldur's Gate. Like I think like the last Baldur's Gate that came out was like in 2000, right? So this
It
is
was a
like,
long time
yeah,
ago.
so this
Yeah.
is like 20 years in the making. So I think a lot of people don't really understand like what Baldur's Gate is. So like I tried to explain, people like, oh, Baldur's Gate is like very similar to like Dragon's Age Origins, right? Like you have like your party that you group up with, you compile it together in your camps, and then you go explore, and do quests like in the overworld. But then you're also developing like these meaningful relationships with like all your companions, and it has been great. I have been loving this so much. There's like so much to do, and like there's so much variety. I have two starts right now, one with a group, one solo, and in both of these particular campaigns, like they are completely different from one another, which is like
Nice.
so cool. And I have been doing like really weird like answer choices in dialogue, so it does like very strange things. And it is just so funny like what the developers have like come up with. I don't want to give any type of spoilers, but there's just like, if you pull the wrong lever, like somebody goes flying. And it is great.
Nice. Yeah, I know there was a lot of buzz about it in the Discord pretty recently because it just dropped on Friday, I think, right?
Thursday. Yeah.
Thursday. Okay. That's awesome. I mean, honestly, those type of games when they're done really well, really are great. I don't play very many of those games. Probably the
Sure.
closest I've come was I played a little bit of the Divinity Original Sin,
Hmm.
which I think is a little bit more on the turn-based side from what I
Yeah.
gather than
Hmm.
this. And if you use Dragon Age as the example, then it's going to be kind of like a hybrid-y
Yep.
combat style, I think. But anyways, hey, I'm glad you're loving it. It's really awesome that they're able to also kind of pick things up because the early access, as I recall, was pretty rough. People were like really worried coming out of the early access that it was gonna be
Be kind
kind
of
of
weird.
iffy. Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of felt that when I was playing in the early access, and this was like a year ago when I was playing
Yeah,
it.
that's what I'm talking about.
Um,
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, well, give it more time. Like I know they haven't released all of the classes yet. I know that they've like scaled down like the early access version of it just so that they could like test things. And I'm just like so happy like the full release has just like so much more and like different types of content. So I was like so worried that like the first chapter that you play, it's also the first chapter you play in the early access, like how similar that was going to be. And it is very different. So I'm very
Nice.
stoked about that.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. I hope that it continues being great.
Yeah, me too.
And the group you're playing with is a lot of fun.
Thanks, Brody. What about you?
So
What's
yeah,
your
so
highlight of the week?
for me, so we don't, we basically, me and Merritt will take a vacation like once a year if we can, just depending on what's going on. And so we kind of already took our big vacation, if you will, because we went up north and spent a week with friends and family and stuff. So we actually got some time up north to, I don't know if it's kind of close to our anniversary, so maybe we could just consider it an early anniversary. But we just went up north, just the two of us, and it was
Nice.
kind of had the cottage just by ourselves, and so it was just a very slow pace, and it was very nice because it just was quiet, and we could like watch whatever shows we wanted, and we didn't have to worry about like taking care of anybody. We were just like worried about making meals for ourselves and stuff, and it was really really nice. So we just had a good time. She was off, but I had to spend a couple days like working half days and stuff. So but it was awesome at the end of those to be like, okay, well, I just wrapped my last call of the day and I'm putting my swim trunks on and going right in the lake. Like,
Nice.
I'm going
Yeah.
to swim for a couple of hours. We're going to get up, we'll make some dinner, and then, we'll just hang out. So did a couple of things of note too that I think were part of that highlight. Number one is we finished watching Silo on Apple TV Plus, which
Okay.
I started and thought it's really good, and then the middle got kind of iffy, and then I feel like it kind of salvaged it at the end.
Okay.
It's a good puzzle boxy show. If anybody's looking at has watched like Dark or Lost or one of those shows, it's kind of in a similar vein, or Severance. I don't think it's as good as any of those shows, but it scratches the itch if somebody's looking for one.
Okay.
Um, so I recommend it. We also watched the latest season of The Witcher, which I know has been very divisive, but I really enjoyed it. I mean, that show just continues to be pretty good. There were a couple things I didn't love, but I thought for the most part it was satisfying.
Okay.
I enjoyed it, and I'm also not in the camp of people who are like, look, I want to be clear that it sucks losing Henry Cavill because like he's awesome, but I'm not ready to write the show off just yet. It's been too good, and I don't want to believe that just because Liam Hemsworth is going to be in there, it's going to go to shit. Like I don't think
Well,
that's fair.
I mean, like Henry is also like a huge Witcher fan, so I think that he's taking the personality of like Geralt, like in the books because he's read them all, like into the show. And I feel like Liam Hemsworth, because I don't know like what his history is with like the Witcher franchise or like the Witcher series in general. Like, is he going to have like that same type of attitude going in? Because I feel
Fair.
like as an actor, like you have some agency, right, to make this character how you think the character should be like.
Sure.
And I'm worried that like by changing the main actor, you know, Geralt, like it would give it a completely different vibe.
Fair. Fair. I did hear somewhere that that like he's already said that he's going to read all the books prior
Oh, okay.
to getting involved. Now there is a difference between under like digesting the source material and very much liking the source material, right?
Sure.
So like to your point, we'll see what we get out of it.
Hmm.
I just think the show has been so good up until now that like I think it still has some possibility. So we'll see how it goes. And then the only other note is that like Diablo is always Diablo. It's always around and it always when it feels good, it feels really good. So this season I started as a rogue and like my build fell to completely apart when I got to World Tier
No.
3. And like I've been doing some little maintenance on it, but like I've had to completely go back to the drawing board. And so I put that down and tried it starting a necromancer and totally fell in love with it.
Oh,
And so I'm
okay.
playing like a blight necromancer, and it is fucking awesome. It's so strong. It's ridiculous. The only downside is that it deals almost exclusively in damage over time, but
Oh,
like
yeah.
it's not even really that gear reliant. Like there is gear that is going to help push into World Tier 4, but like
Hmm.
I mean, basically, after a couple seconds, you melt everything. Bosses, fucking
That's
everything. You
wild.
do so much damage. But you don't have any of your little like skeleton friends. So it's just
Oh, that's
you doing all the
unfortunate.
sacrifices and
Right.
then pushing all your synergies through like this Shadow Blight perk. Anyways, it's been amazing. And so I've had so much fun with the Necromancer, and I
Yay.
guess I've almost completed the like season pass, but that you just get that by playing the game, so that's not that big of
Right.
a deal. And I'm like kind of close-ish to getting on the last tier of the season journey. Um,
Okay.
so it's been fun. I'm really looking for like I think this is a good start. I think the game really needs to lean into the end game even more
I
for
agree.
people who like there is that lag kind of you get halfway through World Tier 3 and you're like, oh, I've seen all there is to see in this game.
Right.
And I wish there was a little bit more. But this is Diablo 1.0. Like Diablo 3 didn't get good until Reaper of Souls dropped.
Yeah.
So like this game is going to take a while and it's going to go through iterations and it's going to get better.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that as well. Well, I'm like really happy that you're playing a necromancer and like doing like a different build than just like the tentacle ones. I feel like a lot of people do like the
Oh yeah.
bone spear, like, and that's like every single necromancer I see out there is just doing bone spear. So it's like nice to see that you're doing a different build and it's also viable. Like it's not just, you know,
Oh God, it's
certain types of
amazing.
classes where it's only like one build's like, you know, viable. So
Yeah, that's one of the things too, is because Josh had actually suggested. Shout out to Josh for this suggestion, to look at this maxroll.gg and use the build guides on there instead of worrying about Icy Veins or some of those other sites,
hmm,
because they have like the scaling, like how to go through leveling and stuff. And
right,
anyways, I've been using one
right,
of those guides, and they kind of call out that it's like a very unique play style on this one, but there's like a lot of viable necromancer builds. I think it like pound for pound seems like one of, if not the strongest overall build in just build viability.
yeah,
Um, so it's been a lot of fun. I've really had a great time playing it this season. I could talk about this for literally the entire hour, so we probably should move on to our topic for the week, which is gonna be it's gonna be a lot of fun. So I'm really looking forward to this. We are going casual again this week, but you know what we're talking about? One of our absolute favorite things. We're talking about food.
hell
So
yeah.
today, Mel and I are going to sit around and chat about which dishes and drinks pair perfectly with our favorite game. So we could be talking about, just like what we would want to eat while we're playing the game. We could talk about food that like reminds us of games for some reason, like whatever really strikes our fancy. And we're going to kind of
Mm.
get in the weeds about the taste and texture and presentation, and we're going to get I think we're gonna make ourselves very hungry. I actually, as a little behind the curtain, I fucked up because we're recording. First of all, Mel, thank you again for being willing to record kind of
Of
early-ish
course.
today. That's awesome. But I fucked up not eating before this episode.
Same.
Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna make ourselves totally miserable by talking about food for the next hour. And so what we've done is we've compiled a list of like nine plus a couple extra in case we're feeling like we want to talk about a couple more games, and we're just gonna kind of see how these strike us from a culinary perspective. So I'm just gonna go down this list that we've got, and
Let's do
you
it.
know why don't we go ahead and we'll have you start, Mel. And the first game on your list is not necessarily a game, but it's a series. I'll let you handle this however you want. The very first is The Legend of Zelda. Mal, kick us off.
Yes. So for Legend of Zelda, like I was thinking about, like what would I like want to eat as if I was living in Hyrule, right? So I thought about myself just like being in like the more specifically thinking about like Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, and being in like one of those stables, right? Like they have
Mm.
like the stables, and like I always think about like, oh, what type of food would I want to eat while being at a stable like this? And I was thinking of having like a really nice and warm butternut squash soup.
Ooh.
With maybe like an apple walnut salad to go with it, and like some soda
Ooh.
bread that like you can just like break apart and like dip into your soup with like a nice red ale. I feel like that is just like a very comforting, like tavern like food that like I could totally get behind and like see myself like, being in Hyrule eating this.
So
Thoughts?
I love it. I absolutely love it. And I guess like in the I'm envisioning this as being like that you're kind of like exploring Hyrule much like Link does.
Yeah.
Maybe you're not Link specifically, but you're like doing one of those things where you're like wandering across the countryside, and at the end of a long day of adventuring, you're ending up at one of those stables,
Yep.
right? That's just like a
Mm-hmm.
collection of weary travelers, and you've got that pot and you've made your stew, right? Your butternut squash soup.
Yep.
I think that sounds fucking awesome. I think
Yeah.
that absolutely sounds
Right?
awesome.
And I think
Yeah.
that like even if we were to like change the meal, right, to be a little bit more like Zelda oriented, instead of having like an apple walnut salad, then we can do like deku nuts, right? Like that would be kind of like a cool play on that.
Yeah.
Um and I just think that like soda bread's just like a wonderful and delicious like crummy bread that would go really well with the whole entire meal.
And I almost get like Lord of the Rings, like Lembas bread kind of vibes
Yeah.
out of that too. So that's kind of doing some dual duty in my mind.
Adventuring duty.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely. So I absolutely love that. And I'm glad that you went that direction because I went a totally different direction. And I broke it out based on pre Breath of the Wild and Breath of the Wild era. So I'm going to do
Okay.
two
All
separate
right.
dishes here. So in terms of pre Breath of the Wild, and I understand that's still kind of painting with a very large brush here, but the
Mhm.
game's pretty drastically changed with Breath of the Wild.
Yep.
I picked a pesto tortellini, and that might sound a little bit weird, but
Okay.
the reason why I went with pesto tortellini, and this is again less, I'm not like in the world of the game. This is just like what I think a meal that reminds me of pre Breath of the Wild's Zelda is that it's an accessible dish, and that's one of the first dishes that I fell in love with at one of our local Italian restaurants when I was growing up, and like one of the ones where I started to like, I used to order it all the time when we went there. My parents loved going there because it was like right across the street from their house, and I would get that like, once every 2 weeks or something. And I feel like I started to appreciate the individual like ingredients in there because it's like, pesto's a little bit on the challenging side if you get a really good one because you can taste like the basil, you can taste the pine nuts, you can taste
Right.
the parmesan, and you start to like look for those other elements around in other places, right? Kind of like in
Sure.
Zelda, where you're like looking across the various dungeons for the various tools and stuff that you can use. So that's kind of what made me think about it. And
Wow.
from a drink perspective, and to be clear, this is not a pairing. This is a totally separate thing. But kind of the thing that made me think about was like a peanut butter and banana smoothie. And you get ones that like just kind of some of your favorite things and you put them together and they still work and they're not over the top and it's just great on the other side. It's just comforting and tasty and delicious. And because I mean, I will get like we have a tropical smoothie cafe not too far away from us, and we'll get
Love that place.
they have a peanut butter smoothie that's super super good, and it's
Mhm.
that you can put banana in, and it's awesome, and it's just super tasty. So that's my pick for pre Breath of the Wild. Now my
Okay.
pick for Breath of the Wild era ones is so it I could I'll say this. I picked a meal that's called they just call it the Ethiopian feast from this restaurant Blue Nile that's near my house in Ferndale. And the reason why I picked this is because basically the way it gets delivered to you is one plate at this restaurant, and it's on this injera bread that actually is what you use instead of silverware to pick up the foods and eat it. But you get these little piles of foods, and they're all fucking delicious, everything, but it's like a little bit, it puts you out of your comfort zone a little bit because it looks a little weird, and because you might have a pile of like stewed cabbage, and you might
Oh,
have some lentil dishes, and you might have some what looks like a really spicy chicken, but it's not that spicy. Anyways, everything that you look at looks like it could be really like, ooh, I don't know if I want to eat that. And then
sure.
like without fail, you'll have everything you eat is like, oh my god, this is one of the most delicious things I've ever eaten, and like you want to just keep eating. It's I've never eaten at this Blue Nile restaurant and not walked away feeling like I'm gonna die. Like every time I can't stop eating. It's so good. So that's in my mind, that's what Breath of the Wild kind of reminds me of, is like all of the elements I can't get enough of. Like
Sure.
I'm just going around, I'm experiencing the world, and it's just the best. Everything is the best. And like,
Yeah.
even though some of the things were off putting about the weapon crafting and stuff, like it's great once you realize how much control you have over every part of that game, and
Mhm.
like Tears of the Kingdom. So, and then I'm going to take a weird one on drink. I'm going to just go straight up coffee, but I have a reason for it, but it won't be explained until later. So, I'm
Wait,
just going to take coffee for it because it's nourishing, it's energizing, it's a great way to start the day. It kind of gets it going. But that's what I'm going to leave it with. I'm going to come back to it though. It'll
okay.
make more sense later. It'll
Okay.
make more
All
sense
right,
later.
that's fine. That's fine. I had to look up like what the Ethiopian feast was at this Blue Nile restaurant just to see like what type of food is in there, and it kind of gives me like for people who don't like really eat like African foods, like Indians like food vibes, right? Like it's a lot of stewed meat, it's in a lot of curry, like there's
Yeah.
a lot of things that you can eat with bread. I assume that you're probably eating like because it's on top of bread, right? Like all of
They
these
so they
different
they
dishes
present it on top of like a layer of this injera bread, and they also give you
give you
injera
bread.
bread. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is like where you like essentially would take the bread. You wouldn't I wouldn't even like use any of like forks and knives with
They
this
don't even
meal.
bring them to you. We've
Oh,
never even asked for them.
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you just take the bread and then you go, oh, I want to have a little bit of like red lentils, right? And then I want a little bit of like stewed meat, so I can like pretty much craft the bite,
Mhm.
like every single bite,
Yep.
right? Oh God,
Yep.
that's such a great analogy
I
to
agonized over this one, so
Zelda.
I'm glad you appreciate that. I spent way too long thinking about that.
I love
Um,
that.
but no, and if anybody lives in the Metro Detroit area, go to Blue Nile. It's fucking amazing. I'll also say that.
Yeah.
Um, all right, so next up on our list, we've got Stardew Valley. I know one of the two of us has played a lot of Stardew Valley. Mel, what do you
Oh,
think about Stardew Valley?
I love Stardew Valley. Everybody knows that I love Stardew Valley. But for my meal is going to be paired with Stardew Valley, I was thinking about like, okay, ratatouille because you're on a
Oh,
farm, right? So you're like making vegetables. So you're going to have like the fresh tomatoes, the fresh eggplants, and the zucchini. But then also like maybe like a steamed walleye to go on top of it, just to
oh,
have like a meat protein option as well. And I felt like this was really perfect because like not only do you farm, you also fish. So it's a good combination of the two, and it's very healthy, right? Like you can kind of put this into like a one dish type of meal or one pan type of meal. And then I was thinking, okay, like what would I drink with this? I was like, Oberon. Oberon would be like a
okay,
nice, like refreshing beer to go along with my refreshing meal. And it has like that citrusy element that I think would pair really nicely with a walleye.
all
So
right.
yeah,
I
I
like
think
that.
that's my Stardew Valley meal.
I like it. I like it. Plus, it's a wheat beer, so you automatically kind of get the imagery
Yeah.
too. which I think is cool. I love that. That's awesome. I went kind of similar on the food. The drink was more of a. I'll get to the drink, but so for the
Uh,
food, I picked a shepherd's pie kind of for the same reason. You've got stuff
Ooh,
that you can find that's really homey, that's comfort food, stick to your bones, but like you find just you can grow right. You get
right.
peas, you get the potatoes. You could get. I always fuck this up. The one of them's made with like lamb or beef, and I'm gonna get this wrong. I should have done my homework on this one, but I do know that it's primarily like spiced meat with with like peas and potatoes in like a meat pie sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Um, which is fine because that's all it needs to do, in my
Right.
opinion. So I have never been a very big fan of Stardew Valley. Now, and that brings
Whoa.
me to my drink. And
What?
my drink here is a Bloody Mary. And the reason why I take a Bloody Mary is because when you put a Bloody Mary on paper, all of those ingredients, I guess vodka I was always take or leave on, but like the rest of them was like hot sauce and
Sure.
pickles and like olives and tomato juice and everything else on paper I absolutely fucking adored, right? Like on paper a Bloody Mary I look at it because God, these are
That
so
sounds
good.
great.
And every time I order it, I fucking hate it. Every time. And you
What?
just put all these things together and I don't like them. And that's how I feel about Stardew Valley, which is that like it's got so
What?
much shit in it that I like and you put it together in a game that I just don't enjoy. I
Why?
don't. I
Like, what
don't
is
love it.
it? But what is
It's
it?
like I think it's like a combination of like I think my problem with that is the same problem I have with like the Persona games, which is I can't have that many splits in my thought process in like I'm gonna either do the high school stuff and the relationship building or like the dungeon crawling and the monster crafting. Like I don't want to manage these four things at once. I want to do like two of them. And so Stardew Valley is kind of one of those two where like I don't want to manage all my relationships and fish and farm and tend the land and explore the dungeon. And I want to do like two of those things. And I don't want it to be in real time. I want it to have an approach like Littlewood where it's like you consume X amount of stamina when you do something
That's fair. That's a
instead
fair.
of like so your decision is it gives you more time to say like maybe I want to do this instead
But
of
I get that. I get that. But then why don't you just do the one thing or the two things and then totally just like ignore all the rest of the
because
stuff?
then I feel like I'm not playing the game. I
But
feel
then
like
you can
I'm
go.
missing out on
But
stuff.
you're just gonna go back to it later, Brody. Like this is how
Maybe.
I play Stardew Valley. I focus on farming like for the first like 2 years, and then I start getting into like the fishing, so I can just collect everything. Okay, I lied. It's farming and mining because you need those two hand in hand. Because like if it's a rainy day, like you're not gonna go out there and water your plants. You're gonna go to the mines, right? So that's like the first 2 years is literally just fishing and mining. Lied, farming and
Farming.
mining.
I knew what you're talking
And
about.
then afterwards, I would collect all of my fish and spend like 2 years doing the whole fishing thing. Maybe every once in a while, I'll give a gift to somebody, but that's pretty much it. But like, I will tell you, I've never gotten married inside of Stardew
Okay.
Valley, and not all of my hearts are at like, are at 10. I probably should at some point because I love this game so much, but I just like really focus on like this, like the mechanics of farming, fishing, and mining. That's it.
Okay. Well, you
Foraging
just
too.
made that game you just made me realize I'm probably playing it wrong then.
I mean, that's
Uh
typical
That's
Brody.
very on par. Yeah, yeah, that's par for the course. That very much tracks. So, all right. Well, I don't have time to pick it back up now, especially if I
I
have
know,
any
right?
hope
But
of playing Dave the Diver in the near future.
oh
But
god, yeah, you need to do that too.
yeah, but I appreciate the fact that you kind of opened my eyes to maybe I'm fucking it up. So, we'll put an asterisk on this one for my answer, I would say. But hey, let's move on to our next game on the list. So the next one on the list we've got is Binding of Isaac. I am definitely curious to see what you put down. When I first kind of discovered you when you came into our orbit, you were streaming almost exclusively Binding
I
of Isaac.
was,
So I know
yeah.
you love this game. Go ahead.
Okay, easy. I think about the food that Isaac would be eating if he was in the basement, being, just trying to get away from his parents. So I imagine like, when Isaac first is like, oh my god, like I want to escape through my basement, he packs a peanut butter and strawberry jelly sandwich and a whole bunch of juice boxes, or like Capri Suns, and that is my meal. That is the dish that like would make the most sense for Binding of Isaac.
I don't know why, but when you said that, the thing that popped into my head was the like girl dinner trend from Instagram and TikTok.
Yeah.
This is my meal. I call it girl dinner. It's just Capri Sun packets.
Yep. That's
Um,
literally it for Binding of Isaac.
I love it. I love it. I went totally the other direction where I picked like ghost pepper hot wings.
Whoa.
Because I was like, look, the people that love this shit really love it. They
Yeah,
really, really love it. But it maybe has a little bit of an accessibility problem sometimes because you start playing
true.
and you're like, God damn, this is punishing. But if you stick with it, you might really love it too, right? That's why I picked that. And my drink is milk, but you can only drink it when you're crying from eating the wings.
Yep, that
You
makes
can't,
sense.
yeah, you can't eat
Yeah.
it beforehand. I figured
Okay.
if I was going to take anything mega spicy, Binding of Isaac was the one on the list
That
for
makes
sure.
sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
because like Binding, like Isaac is crying, right? His tears
His
are the
tears.
ones
There you
that are
go.
like killing all of the enemies. Like
There you
that
go.
that makes sense. Like this whole that whole entire meal makes sense to me, and I approve.
Very good. I'm very proud of that then. So, all right,
I
well,
love
let's
it.
keep this ball rolling. So the next one we've got is just a good old fashioned LAN party, and in this LAN party, you know what's on the table is just some Halo. We're just playing fucking
We're
Halo.
playing Halo, not a very specific type of Halo, but a Halo. And
Yeah,
for mine, I was thinking like, okay, LAN parties, like everybody has pizza. I wanted to go a
pizza's a
little
good
bit
one here.
right, like I wanted to go a little bit outside of pizza, and I decided to go with a meatball and pepperoni hoagie. Like,
Oh, okay.
it's kind of like it gives you a very similar vibe, but like it's in sandwich form, right? I love the crustiness of a hoagie versus like pizza where like the whole entire thing is just relatively soft and maybe you get like a nice crust at the bottom. Where like a hoagie itself, like every single bite is going to be like somewhat crusty. And it has like that additional texture to it. And for my drink, I had to go with Code Red. Like that's just like one of the
Oh yeah, let's
it's like
go.
it's one of those like Halo like Mountain Dew flavors. And I felt
Yeah.
like I couldn't go away from Code Red. It had to be Code Red.
I absolutely love that because I took Mountain Dew straight up for my answer. So
Yeah.
2 points for Mountain Dew and congratulations on awesome marketing, Mountain Dew, because probably from the subtle things of game fuel and stuff over the years, you won that one.
Yep.
For me, I took a very similar approach, but for me, it was just like chicken tenders and Mountain Dew. And the reason I
Oh,
thought that,
okay.
because it was like, you know what? It's something where like if I showed up someplace and probably didn't have any expectation of eating anything, but they were like, here's some good like Chicken Shack or something, right? Some like good
Mhm.
chicken tenders and Mountain Dew. That shit's gonna taste great. It's gonna make you excited. And like one of the things that happens when you're playing like Halo, especially in a LAN party setting with a bunch of people, you get energized by playing. It's fun, you
Right.
get immersed, you get excited, and like it's a meal that just like seems forgettable, but like it doesn't suck. It's great. It's just something everybody loves. Like
So true.
everybody fucking loves chicken tenders. Everybody does. So yeah, okay. So we took similar approaches to that one, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
So this switching gears slightly. So we didn't. This is less of an individual game and more of like a setting, but I think it works in the same way that the LAN party works. And shout out to Dale, who isn't feeling really well today. Dale, we hope you feel better. He was supposed to be part of this and was the inspiration behind this one, which is a fighting game tournament. And you know what? I'm
Yeah.
going to go first on this
Okay.
one. So for me, I took sushi, which seems a little bit weird. And specifically, what I took was there's a type of roll that's at my, and I don't remember what it's called because it's been a while. I think it might just be called the Mexican roll, which is kind of a weird name for it. But sushi sometimes has those weird names, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But it's placed by my house that's primarily hibachi, but like these rolls are shockingly good, which is it's just some tuna and some tempura veggies, and it's got mayo, and they put some jalapeno on the top. So every slice has a little jalapeno on the top. And I thought,
Ooh.
what you want is something that's going to be kind of technical. Like sushi's technical, right? It's a
Mhm.
bunch of different ingredients that work together with synergy, but it's also kind of punchy. You see what I did there? Because of the spice, it's a little bit punchy, just like a fighting game.
I love it.
I'm doing these little like old timey fisticuff hand motions. So it's now I feel pathetic. Anyways, so that's kind of what I put for food because like in especially in sushi, you can be very, very technical about what types of rolls you like. You can find all kinds of different. I feel like this is one genre of food that you can have a totally different experience at any sushi restaurant you go to, and they
Very
all have
true.
unique takes on stuff, and it's great. And then my drink, which is unrelated in this case, might be something like kombucha, which is very like sharp and like again, I'm kind of playing on the punchy thing, but it's like a combination of like sour and sweet and can be a little bit bitter and off-putting, but like also can be pretty good. Like I feel like everybody's experience, well, sorry, a lot of people's experience when they drink kombucha is like what the kombucha girl did in the meme where it's like, "Oh, that's gross." No, that's actually pretty good, right? Like
Hmm.
halfway by the
Yeah.
time when you're halfway through, you're like, "Yeah, I don't hate this. I would drink more of this."
Right.
So those are my 2.
Interesting. I like your sushi option. That sounds delicious, and I want to eat that now.
Yeah, again, we fucked up not eating before this episode.
Yeah. So I kind of went in a very similar food genre in terms of Japanese foods, right? Like I picked sumo stew, and sumo stew is traditionally known in Japan for sumo wrestlers to eat prior to any of their big tournaments. And the reason why is because it has a lot of delicious protein in it. It's essentially just like a hot pot filled with vegetables and tons of protein. And it has like dashi and a chicken broth, which allows, sumo wrestlers to gain weight or like, get the energy they need prior to going into a fight. So I was like thinking like sumo stew would be perfect for a video game tournament because like you need your energy prior to going into your fights. You have to make sure that you have all the fast reflexes. Like this is a very just like fun dish that you could have like amongst friends prior to beating them up at a tournament. And my drink for this, I was thinking, okay, well, if we're still at a video game tournament, like you can't not have Red Bull, like or some sort of energy
Yeah.
drink, right? Like every single gamer is all like there's probably one. I would say that almost every gamer probably has like their one energy drink that there's like their go-to energy drink if they
Mhm.
had to like have one. And I feel like it's Red Bull for a lot of people. So
Yeah. No, that's fair. It's funny when you first of all, I've never heard of sumo stew, but that
what?
makes total sense. And the second that you mentioned it was like a soup, I was like,
Hmm.
"Oh my god, I wonder whether there is part of that that's like it weighs some, so it's going to give them extra weight." So I actually kind of love that.
Yeah.
But like no, that makes total sense because it's giving you like the stuff you need, the nutrients, exact targeted stuff that you're going to need to compete.
Hmm.
So no, I think that's awesome. I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, kind of a similar thing, and this actually goes a little bit back to your highlight of the week, is something like a narrative RPG. So, like a Baldur's Gate or a Mass Effect or a Dragon Age or one of, so, you could probably throw Skyrim in this.
Hmm.
And I'll go ahead and go first on this one too. And my take is going to sound a little bit unusual, which is a Reuben sandwich
Oh.
with a glass of Cabernet. And here's why. So when I go over to my parents' place to eat, we usually pick up food from this local deli on the way in. And we sit around at the table, and my dad always he loves wine, so he always makes sure there's bottles of wine on the table for everybody. I don't drink much anymore, but if I'm going to have a glass of wine, I'll usually have Cabernet. Um, anyway, so we'll sit around and it's not, the food is delicious, don't get me wrong,
Hmm.
the food is great, but we always spend 2 to 3 hours like just kind of sitting around the dinner table just talking, right? Like, and so
Oh.
it's the food is very very good, but it's less about the food and more about just like spending time with the people around you and
Right.
building those relationships and learning what's happened in their lives and kind of the bigger picture and what's going to happen and things down the road and stuff. So it's less of the meal and more of like it's like a family dinner. You're learning about the
Sure.
characters. You're kind of going down the rabbit hole. Sometimes you'll come in with something specific in mind, like, oh man, I was looking through photos of whatever the other day and I saw so and so, and like, doesn't that bring my back memories? You know what I mean? And then the
Hmm.
next thing you know, we've been talking about the same, hanging out with so and so for the next 4 hours.
Right.
Right. And it's just
Yeah.
nostalgic and you can kind of get into the world building and stuff of the game and whatnot. So I again, I'm only taking it because it's a specific experience that we have when we go visit my parents. And it's almost the same experience every time. And it's just nice,
Yeah.
it's just nice. It's comforting. It's nice. So that's gonna be mine.
I love that relationship that you have with deli sandwiches. Like
Yeah.
that's just like very very cool. I kind of took a similar approach where it's like more about like like having the conversations about getting together and stuff like that. And I was thinking like family meals, like what would I want to have as as a family meal? Very similar to yours, where but like I kind of went less less specific and more general. And I was thinking like a roasted chicken meal with like
Mm,
potatoes and carrots and celery all on top of like a bed of mashed potatoes and smothered with gravy. And this is
mm,
something that like if you were to go to like a family dinner party, like it's one of those comforting foods that you can just have all together, talking like with each other about just whatever events that are happening, trying to make those connections like with your family, but also like learning something new about like each other. So I felt like this one in particular was like a really good family meal, like things that you would just have like with your family. You can just like talk about stuff. So
yeah,
very
no,
similar in manner,
yeah, no, I absolutely love that too. And again, like for whatever reason, I have a super soft spot for that kind of food anyways. So like the
right?
idea of like and it kind of going back to the shepherd's pie thing, like that sounds amazingly appetizing to me, even though like I definitely have more exciting food on this list that like in the certain settings is like, oh my God, I crave it. But
Right.
like if I was gonna have just a meal right now and it was like a pot roast or like a
Sure.
chicken and potatoes or something. God, it's so good.
It is.
The other thing I want to mention too is, and this is kind of a brief aside, but like good food starts conversations, like not only conversations like with the people you're with, but like about the food, right? Like I
Right.
don't know how many times I've been to a restaurant. Because I mean, one of the things that's happened in the last like 10 or 15 years is that you've had these restaurants that have popped up, especially the Metro Detroit food scene, by the way. If anybody doesn't live in the Detroit area, is fucking
It's
amazing.
bumping
It's
now.
really, really good. Like to the point where I've after eating at these restaurants, I've talked about this a lot. Like I went down to New Orleans and expected to be blown away by all the food and wasn't, because I can get food that's like as good or better here.
Right. Yeah.
And like I've done a lot of that traveling and trying different foods, and it just I think Detroit does it as good as anybody does. But also, like in the last 15 years, these restaurants have popped up that are like these young, motivated chefs that are like bringing really exciting fusions of flavors and stuff. And I don't know how many times I'll go and eat like either with friends or with my parents or family or whatever, and we'll just spend the whole time like talking about the food. Right?
Yeah.
It's like good food is a conversation. It's so awesome. I just
Yeah,
love it.
that happens in my family too. My dad's like very picky about like the things that he eats, but when he finds something that like he loves, he will not stop talking about it. Like he wants to know like all the different ingredients inside of it. Like sometimes we'll sit around like at dinner and he will like nitpick to be like, "Oh, like what type of like seasoning or herbs do you think that they used with this?" Or like, what type of like vegetables, and he'll like really like nitpick it, and it's just something that I have like learned from him to be like very picky and very like critical of my food. Not saying that like I don't enjoy the food, but just to, like think about it at like a different level, right?
Sure.
So
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I think it's a dad thing. My dad does the exact same thing where he's like, and once if he finds a dish or like an ingredient that he loves, he like will not shut up about it. He'll
right.
just keep being like, God, this was so good. Like, I can't wait to come here next time and get this again. And then like 10 minutes later, be like, I can't get over how good this was. You know what I mean? Talking
Yeah.
about the same thing. We have a pizza joint near us that he has some mouth issues, but like can eat this New York style pizza. And it's
Hmm.
like a wild mushroom pizza. And every time he eats it, he's like, God, this is one of the best things I've ever eaten. And it's like he can't stop talking about it. So it's a dad thing, I think.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
that's
love
awesome.
I love when dads are like, "Hey, I like this meal so much that I'm already thinking about the next time I'm coming here and what I'm going to order."
Well, that's also just a guy thing. I do that too, where
Really?
like I eat something and then like actually let's save it for the pod because I feel like I have some stuff where I could place this in here later.
Okay, okay, okay.
But yeah, let's keep going. I feel like I'm maybe out. Well, no, I'm not. Sorry, I don't have carte blanche on this one. Words are hard. Anyways, Diablo. We both play Diablo.
We
Mel,
do.
what are you taking for Diablo?
Okay, so I was thinking very hard about this one because there's so many different types of food that would pair well with something in regards to hell in general, right? So I decided that I wanted to go with a spicy seafood pasta
Oh, okay.
and red wine. And the reason why I picked spicy seafood pasta and like this is like seafood in a red sauce, like it has like the tomatoes, it has like different types of seafood, not just like fish, but like I'm talking like it has all of your shellfish, like your clams, your mussels, but then it also has like octopus tentacles and like little tiny like calamari rings inside of there. And the reason why I was thinking this is because there's a lot of weird shit in hell. Like there's a lot of weird like monsters and stuff like that. So I was thinking like seafood is probably the most interesting of proteins because it all comes in different shapes and sizes, and not a lot of people love seafood, which is a shame because it's delicious. But it could be really off-putting for people to look at like shrimp, like a whole shrimp, like in your pasta, right? So
Fair.
yeah,
Okay. All right.
spicy seafood pasta.
I love it. I love it. So this is another one of Brody has food and a story. I'm taking a garlic soup recipe that I found on the New York Times a couple of years ago.
Ooh,
And specifically the reason why is because this soup, for whatever reason, I've decided is going to be the thing that I perfect. And so I have
okay,
made this one recipe with slight variations on it 30, 40 times
really?
like and I'll do it like where I'll make it and then the next day I'll make it again where I'll like try a couple things different. Maybe I'll like roast half the garlic or something. Um and anyways, it's been the thing that I've tried to work toward making like my perfect version of for a long time. And that's just Diablo, right? Is you're just
Mm-hmm.
trying to iterate on whatever you're doing to get the best version of it possible. And you're hoping that along the way it tastes good, and most of the time it does. Because it's just you're all you're doing with this recipe, by the way, it's a super simple idea where you're making the broth out of just the garlic pretty much, and then you're using some eggs to temper it with, and you're adding in some things like peas, and you're serving it over just like a nice crusty bread. So it's a very straightforward recipe,
Oh,
but you can kind of fuck around with like the ratios of stuff, how much garlic you add, if you want to add different types, if you want to add a little bit of like onion or something, or like chives or something to like give it a little
interesting.
additional spice or sweetness or whatnot. And that's just how I view this specific recipe. And that's why I kind of put as my drink, I put craft beer, because when I started really liking craft beer, and again, I don't drink much anymore, but when I started going down the craft beer journey about 15 years ago, I got into the place where I'm like, oh, I'm going to try this craft beer. I'm going to try this pale ale
Mm-hmm.
or this IPA or whatever. And then I kept going in search of like what I thought was better or the next cool thing. And the next thing you know it, I was like waiting outside of liquor stores to get barrel aged stouts that only release like one time every
Once,
3 years.
yeah,
Yeah, like I would just go nuts. And in fact, my next game is going to speak to this a little bit. But yeah, so that for me was like, oh, I'm always looking for the rare drop in beer, right?
yeah,
I'm always looking for that store that has that secret beer that's off in the corner that nobody knows about. Like, oh, it's Bourbon County brand stout over there. If somebody's let it sit there, this is a store nobody knows about. I'm going to come back here. So that's Diablo for me. It's just the
interesting.
endless iteration and searching for the best thing. So, well, we
That's
gotta.
so interesting, Brody.
I'm obsessive, is what I'm saying.
I
I
loved
obsess
that.
over things. Um,
But I kind of want you have to send me the recipe for the garlic soup because that
if I find,
sounds.
yeah, I'll dig it up and I'll send it over to you. It's a good one.
I don't. I love food, but I don't like peas. So if I had to replace peas with something else, what vegetable would I use?
Well, you could. So my recommendation is not to replace it with a vegetable, which sounds totally weird, but to replace it with something like a pearl couscous, which
Okay,
is then you get a little bit of like noodle in it too, which something that the recipe doesn't call for, but I frequently add types of noodles that can kind of add some kind of breadiness and some
sure.
just noodliness to it, some
Noodliness.
some
A little bit
carbs
of
to it.
carb action.
Yeah, yeah. And then, if you wanted to, if you felt like it, like sometimes I'll skip the bread and I'll add noodles in or something, right?
Okay.
But yeah, so that's what I might recommend if you want to skip the peas specifically.
All right. Good to know. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So, but I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
So, all right, we got a couple left here. We got about 10 minutes left. So, next one up is one that I think that you and I have spent probably a little bit of time in, which is Final
Yes.
Fantasy 14.
Yes. So I'll go first. I
Please.
have chosen onigiri, and the reason why I
Okay.
chose onigiri is because obviously it's a Japanese food, and Final Fantasy was made in Japan. But the insides of onigiri can be whatever it is that you want. Just like when you're building your characters in Final Fantasy, you could have like tons of different classes and you can pick the ones that you think is going to be best. So I kind of associated that with like onigiri because like there are so many different, like it's all the same dish, but there's like a little bit of flavor on the inside that's like a little bit different from one another. And I decided to go with another Japanese drink for this one, and it's gonna just be green tea, like an iced green tea to go along with your onigiri. Like I see myself like literally sitting in front of a computer playing Final Fantasy 14, eating onigiri, drinking green tea, and then killing a whole bunch of things.
Nice. Nice. I do love that. And I really like the approach of like the diversity and stuff like that. I'll be honest with you that I feel like my answer is a bit of a cop out. This is the one where I was like, here's what I picked instead of like a specific dish. I thought Final Fantasy 14 reminds me of like an experience at a fine dining restaurant. And
Okay.
so like a restaurant like maybe like Park in downtown Detroit where you're going to sit down for like a multiple course meal. It's all very high end. It's all very good because except that during the appetizer portion you have to go to the Waking Sands like 90 times to make sure that you've got everything sorted out. No, but seriously like because to your point again you've got that variety, right? But everything in that game is has the depth. It's got, you can appreciate it, right? They don't
Hmm.
feel like, and nothing feels half-assed in that game. It feels like everything is just perfectly designed to be
And
fun,
deliberate. Yeah.
yeah, and deliberate, and like, again, a meal is a conversation, and Final Fantasy has one of the best stories, if not the best story that I played in a video game, Final Fantasy 14, and like you experience that a fine dining thing with somebody you love, or it's usually a social aspect to it too. So
True.
you kind of go, and it's a whole experience, right? You go through it start to finish, and that's also why I picked for my drink, going off the craft beer thing, a beer called Sam Adams Utopias, which is a beer that's released once every 3 years. um, so it is aged in 4 different types of barrels. It is
Whoa.
26% alcohol by volume, and it's considered an extreme beer. So we got a bottle of this for our on our wedding day
Extreme beer.
from my dad, and it took us. It's beer, but it's high enough alcohol to fortify it. So we drank this one beer over the course of about 3 or 4 years, where we'd have like a sip every time our anniversary came around, or just like if we wanted to. It all drinks almost like a cognac. It's a very
Okay.
fine tasting thing. It is a wild beer. It costs like $150 for a bottle.
Whoa.
Yeah, and it comes in like a little like kettle looking, like a beer, like a fermentation vessel thing.
Not like a growler, right? Like
No, it's hard to, I actually have
it
it in the other room, but
it's like a
it's
big, like you're talking like the big
no,
jug things.
it looks like if you took that and you cut off most of it, so all you see is the top, which is just all. It almost looks kind of steampunky. Like the base is like it's like a round circle, and then it narrows up into like a pipe. It's kind of hard to describe
So
without seeing it.
let me kind of describe cheese wheel, like a big cheese wheel, but it has like the top of like a growler to
That
it
like a cheese wheel that like tapers into like a
into
pipe.
a yeah. Okay, I see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's like it looks like it's made of copper. They've like finished the bottle in a
Oh,
certain.
that's fancy.
Yeah, it is very fancy. Fancy is the right
Oh,
word
it's
for that
fancy.
beer. Like I said, I've only had one of them, and it was on my wedding day. So
Whoa.
that was a very special occasion. Um, so, anyways,
Damn.
that's what I'm taking for that one. So we got a couple more I'd like to do here. So the next one up in the list was one that I added to the list, and that it's Vampire Survivors. Everybody loves the Vampire
Everybody,
Survivors on the Super OK team,
it's true.
and I'll go ahead and go first. I for Vampire Survivors, I wanted something that you just can't put down. It's like I thought about taking like potato chips, and I'm like, yeah, it's not really a meal. But I do have that experience with chips where like Ruffles specifically, like you sit down, you start eating Ruffles, and then you're like,
Hmm.
holy shit, half the bag's gone. So I took like loaded tater tots because it combined,
Ooh.
or like a good poutine, because it just
Ooh.
combines like some of your favorite, just best
Ah,
tasting comfort food
dude.
that you could just sit there and just eat
Yeah.
and eat and eat, right? Alongside like a Sprite or something refreshing. Like I love lemon lime drinks, like
Yeah.
lemonade or limeade or Sprite. I've always loved Sprite or Starry or whatever. Sierra Mist was the goat, but nobody liked that. I was the Sierra. I loved
I
Sierra
loved
Mist.
Sierra Mist. It
Oh
had like
man,
the
get that bite
right.
to it.
Yeah,
Oh, it was
that's what I'm
so good.
saying.
God, I miss
Oh.
Sierra Myth. But anyway, so that was Vampire Survivors. It's refreshing, it's amazing, and you can't put it down.
Yeah. Okay. So I struggled with this one. I love your answer, and I really wish that I went with like tater tots because I fucking love tater tots.
They're so
But
good.
they are so good, right? Tater tots has like this crunchy outside, really soft inside that like is just to die for. Beside the point, we're talking about vampire survivors. So I wanted to pick something that was along lines of like floor chicken, right? Like you have to like destroy something and then it gives you chicken. But I wanted to give it a little bit more of like a twist to it. So I wanted to go with karage with a spicy aioli. Just because like it's still one of those like finger foods that you could eat like, you know, karage with one hand and then play vampire survivors in the other hand. But karage, sorry, if everybody doesn't know what karage is literally just like Japanese fried chicken.
Oh,
Normally
okay.
it has like
Okay.
a lemon like taste to it because they
Mm.
kind of like marinate it a little bit like with lemon, or they do um like a lemon garlic aioli to go with it. So yeah, just thinking about like chicken, almost like the chicken tenders, right? Like but it's crispier than chicken tenders. And my drink to go along with it would be like a cherry coke. I don't know
Ooh.
why I picked cherry coke, but like I was thinking like, what drink would I want to have like with Vampire Survivor? And I was like, man, cherry coke sounds great right now.
Yeah, well, cherry Coke is delicious. It's always been a little bit too sweet for me, but like, it's good.
It
It's
is
good.
good.
And
Yeah.
this looks delicious, by the way. Again, we fucked up so hard. I'm here on the
I'm so
Wikipedia page
hungry,
looking at this meal going, oh my God, I'd eat the shit out of that.
right?
Um, so we got two more that I would like to do. Is it okay if we do the next
Yes,
two
let's
on
do
our
it. Let's
list?
go. Go,
Okay,
go,
so
go.
we did some extras. The next one that we've got on here is Destiny. And I'm gonna go ahead and keep it simple here. I'm talking about the chalupa combo meal from Taco Bell. And
Oh,
here's why. Because there are times when you go and you eat it and you're like, this is fucking amazing. This is so good, right?
yep.
Especially if you get it at like, like 11 or later at night when like everybody's ordering it. It's like as fresh as it's going to get,
Uh
right?
huh.
And there's always the chance you're going to regret it and be mad about it.
Oh, for
Okay.
sure.
And
Yep.
if you do regret it and get mad about it, you put it down for like a year or two. And then you'll think about it down the road and you'll be like, man, it's been a long time since I've had a chalupa combo meal. I should get it again. And like you do that song and dance once more
Yep.
and you obsess over it. And of course my drink has to be Baja Blast for this,
Of
but
course.
it
Yeah.
has to be. But yeah, I'm taking that for Destiny.
Okay.
It's gonna blow your butthole out, but like a couple times it's gonna be worth it.
Oh, for sure. Oh my God. Like, I hate the fact when you go get like a chalupa from Taco Bell and like the whole entire bottom portion of like your taco is like bottoming out because like it's just been sitting in the like
Yeah,
the
just
bread for too
swampy.
long.
Oh,
Yeah,
gross. Yeah.
it's so terrible. But when you get like the perfect chalupa, it's like crispy and like it's soft and you eat it like with the Taco Bell meat and you're like, man, like this is fucking delicious.
That's why you got to get it when you're like seventh in line at the drive-through. That's
True.
like the only time to get Taco Bell. One
Um,
time I was there at like 10:30 in the morning right after they opened and they were like
what?
there was nobody there and I was like what am I doing? I am dancing with the
What are
devil in the
you
pale moonlight
doing?
on this. Jesus Christ. I'm going to spend the next 4 days in the bathroom.
Oh my God. All right.
Uh,
So I'm going to go really quick with my Destiny answer. It's going to be spicy ramen because Cade loved spicy ramen. He had his own little
love it.
spicy ramen stand on the tower. And then a sunshot cocktail, which I would expect to be very similar to a tequila sunrise.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. Also, shout out to Sunshot. I liked it. In reality, what this meal is just
A
there's
Destiny
it's
themed meal.
Telesto ruins the meal somehow.
Oh my God. But Telesto is besto.
Telbesto, yeah, it's so strong. It's the true end game. And then the last one here, which of course we're gonna get to with like a couple minutes left, was Elden Ring. And the reason why I wanted to make sure to do Elden Ring is because I get to go back to Breath of the Wild here. So in Breath of the Wild, I suggested it was this Ethiopian feast from Blue Nile. I'm
Mhm.
taking instead, and this is again a little bit of I'm taking a cuisine. No. I took the right meal. I'm taking spicy chicken korma, which is an Indian dish. And the reason I'm taking Indian is because, like, as an evolution of that,
Sure.
right?
Okay.
As
Yeah,
you're
yeah, yeah.
doing something more exciting, but like Indian food is like a lot, in my mind, it's more challenging than,
Sure.
especially when you get into the spicy foods. It's
Yes.
so good, but it's it's a challenging meal to eat.
Burn your butthole
Yes, it is.
meal.
And then I had this wild coffee when I was in New Orleans. And so taking it back to the coffee I had for Breath of the Wild called Cafe Brulot, which was this whole presentation of coffee. Like, people you've seen make tableside guacamole and stuff. This
Mm.
was where they brew some like really high end coffee, and then they take it and they mix it with some cognac, and they
Ooh.
like half peel an orange and put matches in it. They light it on fire, and like they dribble the coffee through the flaming orange into your glass. And so it comes out, and it like, I was thinking this whole time two things. Number one is I'm that fucking asshole who ordered this drink, and everybody
Yep.
in the restaurant is looking at me for like the 10 minutes it takes him to make this drink. But second, when I was drinking it, I was like, there is no fucking way this tastes this good. Like, this looked like it was all gimmick, and it was one of the best things I've ever consumed in my life. Much like
Real.
Elden Ring took, in my opinion, Breath of the Wild, that idea, and made it more exciting. It made it more dynamic. It made it more risky. Elden Ring is. I regularly have to decide where I put Elden Ring and Breath of the Wild in my top 3 games of all times, because like
Wow.
they're just so good. So that's my take on Elden Ring. Bring us home, Mel.
I really wish that I went before you, because mine is so boring. My Elden Ring food was either going to be chicken wings, right? Like spicy chicken wings, and I would rename the hot sauce to be hot rot sauce, right? Because that just makes the most sense.
Nice. Yeah.
And then I was like, well, but like turtles. What about turtle soup? Because
oh no, the turtle.
I know, but like also you're questioning, is it dog? This is dog.
That's so terrible.
I know, right?
Oh my god. So this week our sponsored thing was just Mel's answer. It was time for Silly's, and she brought it. Holy shit, is this dog?
Is this dog?
Dog ahead.
Asking. That's literally like on the menu if you were to go to an Elden Ring restaurant. It'd be like turtle soup, and then just ask the question underneath.
Oh my god. Yeah, that menu is just, everything is just secret ahead, and then all the downvotes.
Oh my god. Yeah.
Oh my god. Well, this was, as always, when we get together and talk about food, it was too much fun. Mel, thank you so much for indulging us, and I hope that after this episode you eat something delicious. I am already thinking about 7 things that I'm going to either make or acquire to eat immediately after we're done with this.
Same. I'm starving.
Oh my god. So tell the people where they can find you.
I am Melephant, and you can find me as Melephant in the Discord.
And there might be an R somewhere in that name, but
maybe.
Just maybe. And of course, I am Brody. You can find me in the Discord as Arborescence, although you probably won't find me in there recently or in the near future, because I'm probably playing Diablo. So you know what? If you're still listening, thank you for listening. Do you have a least favorite food, Mel? Sorry to put you on the spot here at the end.
Oh, least favorite food. I've had, probably split pea soup. That sounds terrible.
Split pea soup?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, mine's the Dan soup. Man, fuck that. It's terrible.
Yeah,
fuck that forever.
Fuck that.
All right. All right. Well, say goodbye.
Bye, y'all.
Goodbye, everybody.